did go backwards. So I'm going to talk about legacies of love, peace and hope, how bioethics and philosophy, education can mutually aspire. I'd ask the chairperson to tell me when it's 18 minutes. Thank you. My view of life is determined partly by my ontology. Where did I grow up? I'm a social construct, living and working with others in Christchurch, Aotearoa, New Zealand, in Cambridge, in Tsukuba Sound City in Japan, in Rome, Italy, in Bangkok, in Thailand, and in Southern California and Arizona. All these spaces and significant times in another 60 countries around the world. I'd like to thank everyone, all the plants, animals, and people that I've met along the way. Confucius said, to love a thing means wanting it to live. Do you agree?
Yes.
So what's the consequence of this? It means if we want things to live, when something occurs that kills life, we should be disturbed. The title of this presentation is part of a book project I launched on 15th of March 2019. On 15th of March 2019 in Christchurch, New Zealand, we had a white supremacist from Australia come and kill 60 people, 50 people in a mosque there. So we're shocked and heartbroken by the terrorist attack. So I've called for contributions to the book. It's an ongoing project. If you wish to give to me a paper, a poem, a video, a music, a song, please join us in a legacy. So the death toll from this hateless, senseless massacre was 50. How do we overcome intercultural misunderstandings that lead to distrust and hate? You can find the current version of a book and links to some of the videos that students have made on the Bioethics Institute website. The current table of contents, we have many papers. The first is by my brother Ravi, who actually grew up in Bangladesh. He became a New Zealand citizen 31 years ago, and he was in the mosque in his wheelchair at the time of the attack. His dearly beloved wife was killed. He decided to dedicate his life in his prayers to Allah during the shooting. If he survives and the bullets for some reason do not hit him or kill him, he will dedicate his life to the same program that we had. So we welcomed him. My first visit to New Zealand in 6 years, my first stop was to meet with him and join the Friday prayers at the mosque in Christchurch, where they have refurbished the mosque from the blood and the stains. But most of the members of the congregation, the mosque, some had 300 or 400 pieces of shrapnel. How can these senseless murderers deliberately kill people? Who is the cause of this? And I think the problem is us, because we work in education. If the products of our societies are people who hate, it is our problem. You cannot blame some president, you cannot blame some supremacist. We are educators. It is our problem, and we need to work for it. And actually, the Bioethics Institute is based in Christchurch. In Tsukuba Science City in Bangkok. Two of my dear brother and sister from Bangladesh who were students at the time I was in Tsukuba will remember we actually had a murder in our university in Tsukuba Science City. The person who translated the satanic verses of Salman Rushdie to Japanese was ritually enslaved in our university. And in Bangkok, terrorist attacks also occurred. So everywhere there are these people. Some of these figures you'll recognize in the room. We need to work for education to overcome. So we launched this book in the mosque the following week, and we continue to have the papers because bioethics is a love of life. How can you love life and tolerate education systems which lead to people of hatred? Okay, so firstly, the message from my talk is our problem. You cannot point a finger and say it's the man with the golden, funny colored hair sitting in the White House. You cannot say it's some radical politician. It is our fault. Okay? So we have to sort of solve that. So I'm trying to go on. So in these contributions, we think about bioethics. Now, new technology is a catalyst for re-examination of medical ethics and international dialogue on ethical principles. Medical ethics, dental ethics, environmental ethics, public health ethics, applied ethics, ethics of biotechnology. Loving good, self-love, love of others, love of life. These are all relational-based bioethics. Love of life and peace have been foundational in bioethics from the beginning. And it is a theme of 20th Asian Bioethics Conference. It's also been a theme running through many of our conferences in the past. We heard about descriptive ethics. Descriptive ethics is the work that we're going to hear in the conference, the way people do life, their moral interactions and responsibilities with living organisms. So you will see we can survey people in different countries. Bioethics for the people, by the people was mentioned during the opening session. It's a book to try and say, well, people define bioethics in different ways, that we all have a bioethic. In Nature in 2002, I see the next challenge is to map the human mind, the behavior of. How do we map the mind in education? Clearly there are problems with the minds that hate. So we can talk about different ideas. How do these ideas feed into the choices that we make? It may be medical ethics, environmental ethics, social ethics. Prescriptive ethics is to tell others what's ethically good or bad, what principles are most important to make such decisions. It may also be to say that something or someone has rights and others have duties to them. Can we prescribe that you must love others? We can prescribe to ban guns and gun ownership. That is something which I believe bioethicists need to work for. You don't need guns to kill people. Now, of course, I want to tell you an interesting story of a indigenous leader in Hokkaido in Japan. Next August, we'll have a large indigenous people summit during the time of the Olympics. And you're welcome to join. One of the indigenous leaders in Japan decided to go back to hunting animals. As you know, indigenous people often hunt animals. The law in Japan means he is forbidden to use a bow and arrow to kill animals. He has to use a gun. He's forbidden to use a spear for catching salmon. He must use the fishing hook or net. Isn't it ironic that we make laws to prohibit indigenous technology of how you can hunt the animal, but you allow them to use guns? It's sort of our laws are very strange. And of course, laws can help. So bioethically, we have to work with that. What is self-determination? Self-determination requires education, and this session is about the importance of education. It's a human right. We have international standards for bioethics. Countries have agreed to it on paper. But if you agree to value the dignity of life on paper, why do you still allow people to shoot each other, to hate each other, to execute people in capital punishment? How can you do that if you really value the dignity of life? You cannot. There are different principles of bioethics agreed by every country. We need to work. So we have already many policy mandates for the Ministry of Planning in order to promote our philosophies and bioethics that were agreed. But how do we do this? Interactive bioethics is something which we're doing. It's why our session is a little bit delayed, because we're dialoguing with each other to use the time, the precious time that we have to share. The activity of science is not ethically neutral. Bioethicists and scientists, whether we are social scientists or natural scientists, and I'm thinking both, we have a bias that we need to promote independent, falsifiable science for good, to make our world better. When we see corruption, when we see hatred, when we see irrational decisions, we need to speak up. But we may need to speak in the language of evidence and science. And that's what the societies of bioethics do. We have a knowledge production, government, academics, and civil society all are working together. We need to create a policy nexus between researchers, policymakers, and civil society. Study what is, promote empirical research. Many papers in this conference will do that. Anticipate what could be. Think about the future. Don't just translate books. Don't just think about what somebody wrote. Think about, from your sake as a self-determining individual, what the future will be. Anticipate what should be and discuss what we think. My goal is to form a mature society full of well-informed and balanced persons. Bioethically mature is a person or society that can balance the benefits and risks of alternative decisions and make informed choices about them. So in the paper, the full version, the abstract, you'll see the bioethics education program, which has a logic in the last 30 years. From materials, networks, such as Ancient Bioethics Association, statements, evaluation, model games, teacher training, dedicated degree programs. We need a bioethics degree program in every country in the world. That is the goal. And we will see how far we progress. Because some of us are getting old, we're training lots of younger students who may have to accomplish this last goal in case our time is limited. That is your mission. We need to teach this and stand on the shoulders of giants. Bioethical principles may be pre-human and biological, social, and spiritual heritage, and thus almost universal, but the balance in it varies between individuals. We've seen the dangers of colonization. This is if you've heard in America, a skull. Some of you watched cowboy and Indian movies. Our university is located in the Apache Nation, and you probably watched cowboy and Indian movies. Yeah, and you're afraid of who's sculpted. Well, the people who were sculpted, well, the Indians were sculpted for money. The bounty here for the state reward in 1863 is $200 in 1863 to bring the scalp of an Indian to the government office, Ministry of Planning. Here's my scalp, $200, enough to buy a whole farm. There's still one Indian. So that is really the legacy of what bioethics is built on. Eugenics. Is eugenics wonderful? Well, it was in 1935. Now we think bioethics is wonderful. Let's just make sure bioethics is promoting the legacy of love. Eugenics has many challenges. Tsunami warning zones. This is a study of human behavior. You had a tsunami, lots of people died, you make a stone. A big wave came, many people died, do not build below the stone. Repeatedly, what people do is build below the stone, the next tsunami comes and kills the village again. People only remember for 10 years, and then they build and make the same mistakes in the construction of their society. So we have different action plans. I will, there are many materials which you can use, and this is very suitable to finish, you see. And we have so much material that the amount of material that most people study is this much. Yeah? This is the understanding of bioethics by the people who kill. They understand that much. So it's a black day, but from a black day we have hope and love. Actually, it's better to say black. Never mind, spoil the scene. Okay, so I'm going to just transform to the white screen. This is what we need to know about bioethics should be in our heart. Now, the last several minutes of my talk, one of the fathers of the Bangladesh Bioethics Society, Professor Ahmed Niaz, asked to make a discussant. Please come as you come. For 5 minutes he will talk about the topic. You may remember him from previous meetings. I first met Professor Niaz in the Ministry of Planning in Bangladesh when we hosted the Asian Social Science Research Council meeting when I was, which was organized by the regional unit of social neurosciences in UNESCO when I was there. And Professor Niaz is one of my teachers. I'd like you have 5 minutes. He's to give a discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. In fact, I take this opportunity not to present anything more, but the most important thing is to congratulate all of you who organized this meeting, and particularly under the leadership of Shamima and Zima Professor. It's a wonderful program to organize. And we are very proud of your presence, a galaxy of experts from all over the world with so many presentations, and I am sure this presentation will be very helpful if we practice in our real life, and hope we will do that. Regarding the paper, what I should say is a wonderful paper, and its horizon is so big that it's difficult to concentrate in particular areas. I will just touch only few areas. One, I should say, research. When we go for research, when we started research long ago, when we introduced positivistic methodology, and there was a fallacy of positivistic methodology that there will be no subjective involvement. And with that no subjective involvement, we discarded ethics. Ethics is uprooted from mainstream research, and that is the biggest mistake. And as a result, what has happened? We are educated, we are learning, but in reality we are not learning ethics. We are not practicing ethics. We are a big pundit, big knowledgeable person, but without ethics. And that has become a dangerous thing. The world is heading towards a dangerous direction because we have discarded in many cases ethics. I should congratulate Bioethics Association because when I participated first Bioethics Association in the 9th Global Bioethics Conference in Auckland, and there I just got the opportunity to learn something about bioethics. And what I mentioned there very loudly, that why ethics should be only in bioethics. Ethics should be all scientific, all social science knowledge building, knowledge construction. And that is yet to be done. It is still missing. Now the question is, I should criticize myself as a researcher. We try to show our indifference with the people at large. We try to consider ourselves as different species from the people at large. And we try to consider ourselves different species like a bird in the sky. Bird try to teach the fish. Fish go this way, fish go that way without getting into water. As a result, whatever knowledge we are producing, there is a big gap with the reality. And then what we are doing, most of our knowledge we are disseminating among ourselves, not the intended beneficiaries. So intended beneficiaries are not getting benefit out of that. And Professor Darryl mentioned in the last part of this paper, he mentioned about this, the research and its implication, its implementation, its policy. So that is very important, that whatever research we do, there must be some policy implications of that. And now the last thing is about education. What Darryl mentioned is going to do wonderful sort of thing. When he met 10 years back, that time he was dreaming for a university, for an educational system where he will introduce his ethics. And his university, American University of SelfDetermination, from there, all over the world, he is trying to promote ethics. And what he mentioned here, that how he will promote ethics, he mentioned in this paper, that there should be networking, there should be sort of working together, keeping in touch with each other through our Bioethics Association, global, regional Bioethics Association. That we can do. We can network among ourselves. And lastly, what I should say about ethics. Few words. What is ethics? Ethics is love, affection. Ethics is, say, for example, our day-to-day life, our patients. What is our patients? When a doctor seeing a patient taking 1,000 data, I think only giving half a minute and still impatient because giving so much time. So this is the biggest problem we are facing in this world, and I hope that the future human civilization will be a better civilization if we could accept ethics as a guiding philosophy in our everyday life, and that concept is the message trying to put it forward all over the world. We should share and we should work together for attaining this goal. Okay, thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Darryl Mesa, Professor Dianch, for a nice deliberation and informative deliberation. Time constant, I will be going for the second presentation.
Now the second presentation is compassion and others. This paper makes a case for value-based education as a long-term remedy for the divided world. We invite Ravi, University, Kilangan, Malaysia, President, Asian Bioethics Association, Asia Pacific Forum on Ethics and Social Justice.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. On the outset, let me thank the organizers, especially Professor Taslimah Mansur and also my good friend, Professor Shamima, for inviting me here to Bangladesh. This is my first trip to Dhaka, and in this one day I've met some professors here who have worked in Malaysia, and they spoke to me in Malay language. So that was a pleasant surprise. My name is Ravi. I come from the National University of Malaysia, which is called University Kebangsaan. Kebangsaan there means national. The topic of my presentation today is about bioethics principle in value-based education, agencies to mitigate hatred and divide. This is actually part of my chapter in the book that Darryl edited, and Darryl was mentioning about this big project during his presentation. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we are living in a divided world. There is so much divide in this world at this point of time. Now let me just read through what I've prepared here. There is a general consensus among scholars and people alike that there are deep divides in societies all over the world. Some may argue that divisions are as old as human civilizations. Divisions are essentially multifaceted in nature. It can arise due to disagreements on ideologies. It can be political ideologies. It can be religious belief, ethnic differences, socio-economic deprivation and marginalization of weaker groups. Whether the division manifests along the lines of politics, economy, education, religion, and culture, all sides have strong arguments and equally strong counter-arguments to support their claims. Division may arise from a range of issues, such as it can be who the leader should be, who has water and grazing rights, like we see a lot in African countries, on whose property is the well going to be built, where the property boundary line is, and which God should be worshipped. There are also, so therefore, the division is not necessarily in terms of economic well-being or economic lines. Now, let me go. That is the preamble to it. I've jumped to the slides. Let me see where are we. All right. This is the problematic we'd like to discuss with you today. All right. We live in a divided world. There's constant struggle among us to manage our differences with this very sensitive piece of device. Let me see now. It's jumping. This is 6. Wow. Okay, all right. Sorry. Okay. So there is constant struggle to manage differences as a result of history, ideology, faith, language, economic competition, and social-cultural traits. And I mentioned to you there are deep divides in society all over the world. Even within countries, we are divided by ethnicity, by levels of economy, all right, place, which region that we live in, and what kind of resources are obtainable in those regions. So therefore, there are divides in society. Now, the nature of this divide, essentially the underlying nature of this divide are essentially about economic and consumption-driven activities. All right, we are a consuming nation, a consuming society. We consume more than we need, so therefore there are competition for resources, and this has created all sorts of problems, and some of it Darryl mentioned earlier. The other point is the value system that we uphold, because the economic-driven, success-driven thinking is anthropocentric in nature, meaning which we are leaders of our own environment. So therefore, environment is something that we should utilize and exploit. So for this, the idea of anthropocentrism is also one of the causes of the problemity. Now, violence is a new norm of existence, right? Although we talk about peace all the time, there are a lot of peace studies institutes all over the world. Even in my university, we talk about peace. The politician talks about peace and all that, but the instrument of violence is an instrument of the state, right? That's the reason that we have militaries and police and weapons and whatnot. So therefore, violence now, if you look at it everywhere in the world, I'm sure in Bangladesh as well, and if you just have to watch BBC and CNN and Al Jazeera, there are a lot of people dying all over the world because of this idea of divide and differences. Alright? So lack of emphasis on value-based education worldwide, I would argue is the root cause of division, distrust, and also hatred. Supremacies, ideologies, and success-based education priorities often push value-based education to the back burner. Now, whenever we go, I'm sure it is the situation here in Bangladesh that academic achievement is very important, because academic achievement is the stepping stone out of poverty, out of the vicious cycle of poverty. In like countries like India, we find that everybody wants to pass their exams at all costs, at any cost for that matter. In Malaysia, everybody has tuition classes, right? My children goes 4 or 5 hours in public schools and another couple of hours every day in tuitions. So we are spending a lot of money on tuitions, like for example. Why? Because of competition, limited scholarships, and it's a rat race. Okay? Nobody talks so much about ethics nowadays. So therefore, it pushes the value education to the back burner. Next, so what is this value-based education which I'm trying to promote? Value-based education is to look at education and to rethink education, right? At a national level, probably at a global level as well. Now, it is an approach to teaching that deals with values and principles. Now, I'm not telling that the present system do not have values and principles. I'm sure in all the countries there are some level of values and ethics are put in place. But having said that, as what Darryl has mentioned, where we have gone wrong, why as educators we fail to educate the public, or rather our students, against violence. Right? Now, learners are exposed to holistically to values by integrating them to principles that guide behavior and actions. So education primarily not only is about knowledge creation and retaining of knowledge, but also about creating behaviors and actions and thinking about it as well. Now, we are in a situation, we are in a, environment that knowledge, we create knowledge, or rather we learn knowledge for the purposes of acquiring knowledge, right? We don't really think about how it's going to impact society, how it's going to impact our own lives, the very changing nature. I think we need to bring that focus into education. Value-based education empowers learners to learn contemplate and reflect on human values such as respect, tolerance, peace, care, compassion, and others. Now this is very important. If your children, if the school children and the university children, the students, do not think, like for example today when we talk about bioethics, if you don't contemplate and think about how you can internalize the principles of bioethics, like for example, do no harm, like for example, alright, and think about it, then you fail in the education because there is no change in behavior. Alright, like for example, if you think that protecting the environment is very important, but the very next day when you're traveling, you throw rubbish out of your car, that means you have not internalized what you have done. That means you have the knowledge, you understand it, but you have not really internalized it. Okay. Now, value-based education empowers learners to learn, contemplate, and reflect. I mentioned this earlier, such as respect, tolerance, peace, care, compassion, and others. Now, so that is value-based. All right. So why? Why do you need value-based education? Success-based systems or less value-based system in many countries in the world are causing chaos. Because we create individuals who are intelligent, who are smart, but who are less ethical. Okay? This is all the value-based education is an approach to teaching that deals with values and principles. Learners are exposed holistically to values by integrating them with the principle of good behavior and action. Okay? I think I've already gone through this. Alright, look at the last point, which is the internal. So what is important here is internal moral reasoning. That is to help learners exercise ethical judgment and social responsibility. If you don't internalize it, then it doesn't become part of your behavior. We talk about non-violence, but if you don't internalize it, then it doesn't become part of your behavior, part of your understanding, and part of your value system. Okay. So what value should be inculcated? Alright? What value should be inculcated? How do you choose which value to be inculcated? So the argument which I'm trying to make here, the argument is values are actually structurally, socially and religiously defined. Now, if you work for a major multinational company, that company may have certain corporate values. Am I right? Certain corporate values. Right? Then you embrace, as a member of that company, alright, you embrace those values. But you do not embrace those values alone, but you also embrace values that you have learned from small. Am I right? What your mother has taught you, your parents have taught you, your society has taught you. Then you embrace the religious value as well. So there can be contradiction of value as well. But having said that, what is important is whichever sets of values that you want to embrace in the schooling system, alright, it should propagate strong universal values of mankind. Meaning which, what is important is respecting individuals, respecting that humans, mankind are different. They look different, they speak different, am I right? Their belief systems are different, alright? So the idea of tolerance can only come about if you understand and believe that there must be respect among these differences in mankind. Not only mankind, but also to the environment and other sentient beings as well. So therefore, value-based education empowers learners to learn and contemplate and reflect on human values. These are some of my suggestions. These are the universal values that you have, like respect for self and others. Alright? Respect for self and others. I mean, you respect yourself and you respect others. You respect rather human dignity and rights. That each living individual, may be human or non-human entities, have dignity, So therefore, and they are also endowed with rights. Alright? And as human beings, we have the responsibility to protect those. Social justice. Alright? Social justice is a new phenomenon that came about in the last 15 years, I would say. To look at justice for all. Alright? Justice must make sense. Alright? Tolerance and peace. We have been talking about this since time immemorial, but we are still talking about this. Tolerance. Alright? Well, another component of tolerance, while you tolerate, there must be some level of acceptance as well. Care and compassion. This is the core sense of bioethics. That is love. As Darryl has mentioned. Then fair moral reasoning. Alright? You need to reason certain actions intrinsically, that whatever actions or whatever is out there, whatever you are contemplating, then you need to have reasoning. You need to reason within yourself that, hey, that action is morally wrong or maybe morally right. Okay? So there may be some other shades to it as well. So having said that, how is it being inculcated? So how can we inculcate value-based education into the system? Now it can go at all levels. In some communities have already done it. It can be at kindergarten level, preschool or school or even university. Value-based education or value inculcation can be carried out in any type of lessons. But values are drawn out in the activity. Like for example, when we talk about, like for example, you are teaching your students in the university or in anywhere about importance of water. Alright? Water is a scarce resource. So we need to look at, types of water, how water is managed, fine. But in that lesson, you can also talk about water equity. That means access of clean water should not be only for the selected few. It should be for all. It should be also fair towards all the regions. Alright? So that's number one. So we talk about water. The value here is water equity. Alright? That means that everybody should have access to clean water. The right for access of clean water is also human rights. Alright? It comes, the value that we are trying to promote here is right. It is your right, because water is God given. But some will claim that I don't have to pay for clean water because it's God given. Am I right? But there's a separate argument with that as well. But again, it's also your rights. Responsibility to use water in a sustainable way is partly environmental ethics. Okay? So, whatever activities that we do, like for example in class or in the development of syllabus, we can have a facility, or rather the system that we can draw, alright, this value system and try to highlight this value system in the endeavors. So value-based education allows the learners to internalize the subject matter that he or she is learning. Now children develop more secure sense of self and more empowered to take responsibility of their learning. Now, yesterday in another talk in the American University, I spoke about energy. Alright? Now, one of the areas which I work is energy security, but ethics is also part of it as well. Okay, like we have electricity here, right? There is enough lights in the room that you can see me. Fine. Okay. Now we are happy there is electricity, the lights are working. What if suddenly there is a blackout? What if when you on the switch there is no electricity, there is no lights? Okay, what happens? Nothing will happen, right? You guys will grumble and probably go outside, right? We'll have another round of coffee. Okay? But we rarely think about the sources of that energy, right? As long as there's energy, we are happy. We don't talk about the sources of energy, where it comes from, whether it's from renewable or non-renewable sources, how the energy was harnessed, all right? So I think we stop at complacency level. We are complacent that we are fine, our lives are not interrupted, so therefore. But in other places, I remember this, I was on a bus in Melbourne, Australia with my wife, and we took a tour, a day tour. And there was this driver who drove the bus, and he was also the travel agent. He was driving, and he spoke about energy choices. Not sure why, but he was talking about, we are too much coal dependent, and therefore we need to take care of our energy sources. So they have gone to a separate level. They are talking about ethics of energy. Yeah. Right. Okay, I have 5 minutes. Don't worry, I'll finish in time. So I think this is what is very important. Now we need to inculcate the society, create more awareness within society about these things that we never thought about before. Okay. Now what is desired? What is the desired outcome? What is the desired outcome out of this value-based education? Primarily it's about ethical intelligence. What is ethical intelligence? It's a set of words, right? Set of words. We call it value-laden words, like idea of peace, respect, justice, fairness, all right, and others. And those words that add meaning to our own lives. I mean, when I talk about peace, it is not just a word, but it has meaning to myself, right? As long as that aspect of education is not achieved, then, this ethics education has failed, because we don't bring any changes. Okay, let me go to the next one, the last one. So what is the conclusion that I'm trying to make here? Number one, the end of education is character. I did not say this. This is one of my friends, Dr. Chandrasekhar, in his book, in his article, in his chapter that he wrote last year, he mentioned this in his chapter. The end of education is character, which refers to mental and moral qualities distinctive to an individual. Gandhi said that the main aim of education is the development of human personality, which manifests in the body, mind, heart, and the spirit of individuals. Education does not only stimulate the spiritual, intellectual, and physical strength of the individual, but it also kindles the idea of sympathy, fellowship, and deep feeling of love. So it also nurtures the behavior of peace building, conflict resolution among individuals, alright, that manages differences through dialogue, through tolerance, through friendship, reconciliation, and confident buildings among individuals. So value-based education is essentially about changing the way that we think. Thank you.
Thank you. And is there a power units?
We cannot hear you. We cannot hear you.
I'm sorry. Thank you, Ravi, for your wonderful presentation. We think that we still have a couple minutes for question and comments. Any comment or question from floor? Yes, please. Yes, just use my mic.
Thank you, Professor Ravi. I appreciate Ravi, how
Yes, please. Yeah, that would be good.
Thank you for excellent presentation, Professor Ravi. To Professor Ravi, if you think of the value-based education, how can you proceed for a formal education? If you think for the nursing or medical or dental education, how can we proceed for a formal educational setup to inculcate or introduce the value-based education? Do you have anything to say or any approach to follow?
Okay, as soon as possible, we can collect couple questions and then go to you for answer. Please.
Thank you, Ravi, for your nice presentation. And there is another presentation, Dr.Darryl. Thank you, Darryl, for your presentation. I was late Darryl's presentation. But I have a question to Ravi. I heard his presentation well. Okay, Ravi, you have said that the value should be global, universal. But you know, culture is different, and how can you incorporate this value within different culture? If you think it is correct, so we need 100 years to go to the goal. How do you incorporate quickly we can reach the goal? So thank you.
I think that different cultures is essentially issue. But I think that I also want to ask you this question, okay, later. Any further questions and comments?
I really appreciate it.
Okay.
About what is it?
The paper argues that the lack of emphasis on value-based education worldwide is one of the root causes of divisions, distrust, and hatred. So we need this value-based education, and I have no personal question, but please may answer the.
Thank you. Darryl, you want to go first?
You first.
All right. Thank you so much for the questions.
I'm going to answer the question. I have only one thing to comment. I think there are some ethical dilemmas, you know. There are different values like utilitarian, egalitarian, liberal values, and there is a conflict between all these values. We cannot ignore the values, but some people are more biased towards particular values. So how we are going to implement in the education system?
Ravi has here.
Okay, one more. Okay, well, I wanted to say something about what Professor Ravichandran spoke, because education means people will not know their culture or their other people who are living neighborhood or their own parents. They may not remember all that. When teaching is given, education is given, the value will be given and compassion will be given. See, compassion is something which is very great. Compassion where you are going to show that you are very good to others, those who are educating, those who are in the neighborhood, those who are in the parenthood. Everywhere they will get it because they don't have anything. They won't have anything. So, when education is given, value is given. That was a really good lecture that he gave, and it was a very good book that he has written. And the book must be given to all educated or educating schools. See, even if they are 5 years old or 2 years old, and then till they become 15 years old, or even if they are in college, if it is given, I think they will definitely increase the compassion and the culture will be different. Whatever can be the culture of whatever may be the country, it will all become the same. I really appreciated what he spoke.
Thank you. Ravi, now get your feedback.
I think Madam has answered the questions. So okay. Well, I have one or two reflections as well. The first question was, how do you incorporate that into formal education? Let me give you examples in Malaysia as well. In Malaysia, when I was growing up, there was this, of course there is religious education for those who are Muslims, and for those who are not Muslims, we have civic education, alright? So basically nobody likes civics lesson because, no, even the teacher is not interested in civic. The students are also not interested in civic, and the parents are also not interested in civic. So nobody, it is a class that, when teachers may not want to come and things of that sort. So nobody actually, likes the idea of this, they place more economic value to other lessons than the civic lessons as well. But now we have changed it to a moral education, alright, moral education. What happens in the civic lesson, it is more prescriptive. They'll tell you what are the values. Alright, they'll tell you, you need to be good. These are the values, you be good. Alright? You need to also identify, respect for other values, other people, like for example, the belief systems. They just prescriptive. Alright? But the new textbooks at the moment, right now we have moral education. Talks about slightly differently. I mean, it talks about different approach. Like for example, there are stories there, or there are activities that for you to inculcate the values, right? The values are actually drawn out. You are able to internalize. I think the whole idea of these values is you cannot teach value. I don't believe that you can teach someone to be good, right? Of course, it is a process of inculcation from what your mother has said, your parents, your religious leaders have said throughout the years, right? Your values are your socio-cultural makeup of the individual. So I think that is, so formal education, you need to have philosophers, right? Philosophers and people who knows about this idea of values and differences of values. Now the problem that starts is basically as what Shamima mentioned about global versus universalism versus particularism, right? Universalism, I know we have worked in the UNESCO networks with Professor Darryl, and there is also a project on universal ethics, okay? But there is also, while globalization has given us universal ethics, there are also contradictions to it, right? There are also challenges. As Hegel said, whenever there is a thesis, there must be an antithesis, right? And that creates another thesis. So, people challenge universalism. They say that you cannot have universal values throughout, that without the distinction and recognition of local knowledge. Right? So, I think this is what is important. That's what I was mentioning just now in the talk. The value-based system must be socially, structurally, and religiously constructed. You need to decide. Your community needs to decide. Bangladesh needs to decide what is the value system that you want to uphold. But of course, as a guidance, you have the international standards, right? When you say respect, it's something which is accepted by everybody. Human rights is accepted by everybody. But how do you define human rights? To what extent that differs as well? What is human rights in Saudi Arabia may be different from in the United States or in Bangladesh. So I think this is something the society have to deal with it. Yeah. Right. Sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Darryl, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your question, Vijay. To add to what Ravi has replied, how do we apply the universal education? What is the values? But I'd like to mention another aspect is, who do we include as a moral agent? And here we see some interesting things. So, for example, at lunch, which you will have eventually, our Hindu brothers and sisters will not be eating beef. Some of them will be vegetarian. Our Muslim brothers and sisters will not be eating pork. Okay? Vegan and vegetarian brothers and sisters will have different choices. And we all have different inclusion. But we still have a value to eat. Okay? In education systems, I mapped the curriculum for primary and secondary education for every country in Asia Pacific to all the curriculum goals at each level. So comparing this across Asia Pacific, the 47 countries, there's many fundamental similarities of how we teach children what's the goals of education. So that's why we could form the universal values and universal goals of teaching. There are some things which are foundational values, and one is we also have a fusion of different things together. For example, you may see a fusion of culture. We may be wearing a sari and sneakers, because sneakers are very practical.
Yes.
I leave it to you to discover who is doing this in their costume. Okay? But this is very practical mandalization. And at lunch, some of you will eat with your hands, some will eat with a spoon, a fork, a knife, chopsticks. Some of you, I don't know what you're going to use. But this is an etiquette. But still we have the fundamental values. So if we have eyes to look for similarities, we will find them. When we have eyes for differences, we will find them. And in education, we need to teach children who are born with eyes of inclusivity. That the children think everyone is the same. Also, when they talk to trees and plants and animals and people. And our social systems create racism, sexism, elitism, anthropocentrism in different ways. But our education on this has to come back to this. It's our education role. So I think about my closing responses. Thank you.
Last question?
One more. Because what Professor Darryl also spoke, love of life, love for all life. That means people have to love animals, even moth, butterfly, birds. Then you have to love all lives, all forms of life. Then I used to smile, why he is saying this? But then when I study Quran, then I study Bible, because from my second year I used to study only Bible, because I was in a Christian school and we used to sing songs by 8 o'clock in the morning. Only then I started reading that when I was 20, because when I was 25 or 35, when Dr.Darryl said love of all life, then I started reading Bible Gabriel and Quran's Gabriel. Then I came to know that in Hinduism, the God is not only in Hinduism. The God says He is in Islam, He is in Christianity, He is the same person. And what the God says is, there must be compassion, there must be value towards all forms of life. Only that I came to know. Only then I understood why bioethics, and the bioethics must be in the form of education and value-based education. All this I came to know, and we started in Mother Teresa Women's University, where we wanted in all schools to take up bioethics education, value-based education. Thank you.
Thank you, presenters.
Okay, just one question to. Thank you, Mr. Ravi. My question is that how do you compare between your view, I mean, universal value and Aristotle virtue ethics, or virtue theory?
Virtue ethics.
Virtue ethics. It says about shared cultural tradition. So in this global community where we differ from each other on every issue, so in that case, how do you compare your view and the view supplied by Aristotle? Or do you think it's an improvement on Aristotelian view that says it is not applicable to diversity, where we do not share cultural tradition?
Time constraint, this will be the last question answering session. Thank you.
Yeah, my answer will be short as well, probably. No, it's how you embrace it, right? I think we live in a society that embraces different value systems, right? The value system of our ethnicity, the value system of our beliefs, the value system of our society, and the value system of the organization that we work with. So we are inundated with different types of values, and to me there is also a contradiction of values, right? Like for example, in school, my daughter used to say, you said that you're not supposed to do this, but in school, I'll give you another issue about LGBT, alright? Growing up, I used this example yesterday itself. Growing up, we talk about LGBT. Is it a sensitive issue in Bangladesh? Is it a sensitive issue here? LGBT. Yes. Alright?
It is growing up.
It's good, okay. I mean, growing up, I'm in my 5 series, 50s. So LGBT was a sensitive issue in many Asian societies. We don't talk about it, right? Alright. But now the younger generation are quite open about it. And my children, my daughter, which is 13 years old, and she comes and talks to me about LGBT, and she's very passionate about it. I say, no, LGBT will go to hell. Just joking. Alright. But they want to talk about it, alright? Now they are subscribing to certain value system, which is a bit alien to us, but because they are living in a different society. So therefore, I think that value system interacts by itself, alright? It is very dynamic and it will change, alright? But what we are looking at, the idea of the commonality in terms of respect, the commonality in terms of idea of peace, toleration, which will allow people to coexist peacefully. That's what we want. Alright? There will be division, there will be some level of caste and division in society. I'm not telling that it will, with value-based education, it will save all the problems. Eventually that will persist. But what I'm saying that you'll be better suited to embrace differences. Okay, that's my point.
Thank you. Before concluding this session, presentation of Memento by the organizing committee, I request Dr. Rida and Dr. Mary to please come up on the dais to present Memento to the chair of this session. Thank you. We are concluding this session. The next session will be at 2 p.m. sharp. And now